In teamwork projects, the billing tab within a particular project allows you to easily organize your billable time and expenses into invoices. These invoices will help you keep track of spending and costs for your project. You can add as much time and expenses into an invoice as you wish, and using the billing tab is really easy. So here we are in the billing tab of our particular project, and over on the left hand side we can see all of our open invoices, and if we click into a particular invoice, we can see the invoice ID, we can see the issue date of the invoice, we can see all of the billable time added into the invoice, we can also see any expenses if any expenses are logged, we can see the amount of time logged for every entry and the cost of this time, we can see our total for billable time, we can also see our total for logged expenses, and we can see our absolute total here. Over on the left hand side you can see that we can export our invoice. We can also easily mark our invoice as complete. So in the pop-up window here we just need to select OK. Up on the top here we can also look at our completed invoices, where again we can see all of the information that we can see in an open invoice. And if we want to reopen a closed invoice, we can easily do that by selecting Reopen Invoice here. We can easily add a new invoice by just going up to the top right and selecting Add Invoice. So here we need to give our invoice an ID. We also need to specify an issue date, so I'll leave this as the 1st of February. We can select a particular currency here, so we can search for a particular currency, or we can go through our list of currencies here. So I leave this as US dollar. We can also state whether or not our pricing will be based on time and expenses, or we can select a fixed price. So I'll go with time and expenses here, looking at the optional tab now, and we can add a PO number and a description if we want to. And now I'm just going to add this invoice, and if we look back to our open invoices, you can see that our newly created invoice has been added. And if we want to delete this invoice, we can easily do that by hovering over the invoice and selecting the trash icon here. Now that we've created an invoice, let's look at adding time and expenses into that invoice. So in the Unbuild Time tab here, we can customize the information being returned. So we can select a specific user, or of course we can select everyone. We can customize our date range here, so we can select a start date and an end date. Or if we select the drop down here, we can choose all dates, yesterday, today, this week, and so on. We can also change our sort order here, so this can be date, user, or time spent. And we can alternate between ascending and descending order. So I'll go with descending order here. And once we're happy with any changes here, we just need to select update. Looking over to the right hand side here, and we can alter how our time is displayed. So we can select decimal here, or hours and minutes. Looking at the set rates option now, where we can set our staff cost per hour. So this is currently set to 30. Let's say I want to change that to 40. If we select the star option here, we can set this as our default rate across all of our projects. And over here, we can select to apply this rate to all users. So I'll just confirm that. And now I'll just update our changes. And below this, we can see all of the unbilled time that matches the criteria we just selected. So if we want to add any of this logged time into an invoice, we can just click and drag the time over into our invoice. We can also select multiple times here. And again, we just need to drag these over. So you can see that we're dragging 2 items into our invoice. Now let's have a look at adding unbilled expenses. So again, we have all of the same options here for customizing our list. And we can also quickly add a new expense by going up here to the top right and selecting Add Expense. So in the pop-up window here, we need to give our expense a name. Next up, we need to add the cost. We can also customize the date for our expense, and we have the option of adding a description. So I'll just add this expense now, and our expense has been added into our list. And again, we can select our expenses and just drag them into our invoice. So in this case, I'm going to select all of our expenses and drag them into our created invoice. So now let's have a look at that invoice. So again, here we can see all of our billable time and our expenses. And over on the right hand side, we can see the time logged and the cost. We can see our subtotal for the billable time. For the expenses, we can see who logged the expense and the cost. And again, we can see our subtotal. We can easily edit the time or the expenses by just hovering over that section and selecting the edit option. So let's say that I want to remove the advertising campaign here. We just need to select Move Items, and we can easily move it into another invoice. So we can just select our invoice and choose Move Expenses. Now let's look at exporting our invoice here. So you can see that we can export to PDF, HTML, Excel, FreshBooks, Harvest, BlinkSale, QuickBooks, and Xero. So I'll just export to HTML here, and then we just choose Export. And here we can see our exported invoice. And there we go, that's how user-friendly and powerful the billing tab is in Teamwork projects.